Good evening, everyone. 7:31 on the 8th of December. We're at a work session. Welcome. We'll start with the pledge and move on to the meeting.
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Can I just ask a question, Mayor? I apologize. We're doing work first, then going into special? Was that the plan?
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
it says on here. Yeah.
No, only because the special session agenda has at the end adjourn into work session. So that's
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah. You know
Okay.
what?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just was
Actually,
confused.
both agendas. One has adjournment to work session. Yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
All right. Who's running the meeting, folks? Do we have any announcements? Okay. I just wrote in my mayor's note, which I think went out a little late. Sorry, folks. That, we had a very nice sort of beginning of the kickoff of the holiday season, that I wasn't here to see the snowball going down, but somebody videotaped it for me. Pretty cool, pretty amazing. Sometimes it's nice to do something a little different, change things up a bit. I think that Thanksgiving has caused some of the COVID numbers to go up a bit. Hopefully it will flatten out shortly. And if not, we will continue as a municipality to take it one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and be as helpful to our community as we possibly can. I do want to restate that normally the big budget announcement takes on a lot of applause. Sorry, Dale, this year it took second seat, not back seat, just right next to the first seat. Because a lot of work, it's not 1 month worth of work, it's months worth of work, and it drives the following year, and each year drives the year after it. So I'm grateful to both the staff. I'm grateful to people who had input, who chose to participate in the conversation. And I'm grateful that we have a budget with a 0% increase on the tax rate that will still allow us to help in the everyday lives of the folks that live and work here in Ossining, because the budget was a very thoughtful budget about everyday living scenarios and long-term investments in the community, from water plants to firehouses to roads to community center, the waterfront, the housing. It covered a lot of breadth and depth. So much appreciated, and I think we can move on the rest of the meeting. Okay. I'm the one that's supposed to turn this over to village manager, who's supposed to say, okay, we're ready with the meeting. And that
I'm sorry.
I sort of said that, but I'm going to go again, and you're on.
I'm sorry. Maddi and I both got our boosters today, so I don't know. Maybe we're like, I don't know. Maddi's probably fine. I think it's probably just me. So
well,
first up,
congratulations, and I'm glad to hear that you got your boosters. That's really great. If I see one of you nodding off, we'll just tap dance through it and make believe we know what we're doing.
You're muted, Karen.
Karen, you're muted.
I'm batting 1,000 here. So first up, it's the 2022 parking plan, and we have Chief Sylvester and Maddi Zachacz here to present this. And as you all know, this is the culmination of over a year of study and work and input and community engagement. But we've come up with a really creative way to incentivize parking and turnover parking more quickly, and also a lot of things that will help based on our existing parking configuration, better utilize underutilized lots, as well as provide greater access to our shops, and also allow us to move forward as we now have more planning going on in the village, and we'll anticipate more and different parking needs to better evaluate what those are and respond to them, and be able to work with a virtual parking app too, which will be really, really helpful in terms of enforcing metered parking. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Manager Zachacz and Chief Sylvester.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Can everybody hear me?
I think you're coming in pretty good. Let me know if
Cool.
you're not.
Quiet. Right, I'm gonna change my phone. Give me 1 second.
You're breaking
I hear you okay. Actually, Rika, you're the one that's coming in quiet.
me. Okay.
Oh. Okay, as long as I'm good, just somebody wave because you're going to be in a tiny little box on the side of my screen. So Chief, I'm going to take the lead tonight, and of course he is our in-house expert. He will tell me if there's something I miss.
You're coming in broken up.
Maddi, you're coming
bad.
in and out. You're in and out.
About now. Good. Okay. As I was saying, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, excellent. So good evening, Mayor, members of the board. So we have been discussing parking for about the past 2 years in the village, at least as long as I've been here, but I know it's been discussed for far, far longer than that. But on the heels of the completion of our mobility and parking study, which as a reminder was funded in part by ESD, Empire State Development, we received a pretty impressive document sort of guiding us as we move forward in trying to manage parking, specifically downtown, but there's a lot of things in here that will sort of also relate to parking throughout the village where we know we have some other issues. So in the same vein as the study presented the recommendations, we've categorized them into 5 different distinct categories, which you can see here on the screen. So there's a couple of recommendations under each one that we're proposing for the year 2022. I did provide the board with a memo with a little bit of further detail on this, but the great part about many of the solutions is that many of them are going to be free or nearly free to the village. So we've already talked about the parking mobile app, which the village is going to absorb, at least for now, a little bit of the fee, but it's nearly free. A lot of these recommendations have to do with passing local laws to change local regulations, some staff time, and perhaps some signage. And then once we start moving into the wayfinding, which I'm anticipating will be in 2023, that'll be a little bit more money on signage, but we'll be pretty much done with the policy end of it. So certainly if anyone has any questions, you can stop me along the way or stop me at the end, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to go through our first recommendations, which are to expand the parking supply. So there were many more strategies identified in the study than just the ones that we're highlighting tonight. Some of them were in the quick win category, some in the short term and some in the long term. But basically taking a look at what the board has on their plate right now, as well as what made sense to us as in terms of a cascading order. These are the ones that we sort of cherry picked out. And most of them are from the quick and short term, but we have 1 or 2 that are also from the long term category. So as far as expanding the parking supply, we are recommending 3 different strategies for 2022. The first one is to create more employee parking opportunities in downtown. And I wish that we could take credit for this one, but this actually came from a local business owner who called us while we were working on the study and made the suggestion regarding Central Avenue. So I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. So you see where we are on Central Avenue. Main Street is here. So as you're coming down the hill, right now we have parking spots on the left-hand side of the hill as you're going down. It's probably about 10 parking spaces. Once you get to the spot in the Kilbrook, there's a break where it doesn't allow you to park anymore. But the recommendation was, hey, my staff really want to park here. They don't want to keep parking in the 3-hour spots. They don't want to keep running out and moving their cars to stay compliant. Can you change these 2-hour spots into 8-hour spots? So we're like, oh, wow, that's a pretty good idea. That way we can move at least some of the restaurant employees, folks from local businesses down onto Central Avenue. It's really not a bad walk at all, at least for these first couple of spots. And then they can park there for 8 hours free of charge, and it'll keep them out of the parking lots and sort of out from underfoot. An expansion of this strategy would be continuing down the hill on Central Avenue. So again, after the Sing Sing Kill Greenway, there's a couple more spaces, probably more like 25, going down to Water Street. That's a little bit more of a hike, but currently those are station permit parking, which we could consider repurposing also into 8-hour spots. We could talk about doing this as a program that basically someone would have to show a current pay stub, proof of employment, and they would get a sticker to put on their car to make sure this wasn't being used by folks who otherwise would be purchasing a residential permit. But that is the first recommendation, and it came from one of our local business owners, and we thought it was a pretty good one.
Maddi, you want us to wait till the end and then ask the questions? What
No,
works best for you?
chime in, whatever's easiest.
Okay. So employee parking is not village employees, it's employees for, I'm just clarifying.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Thank you
It's
for making the distinction. Yeah.
Right. And one of the reasons as you go closer to the train station that I think, I don't even remember, but there's 3 hours, is so that commuters park there and then walk back up, because that would be quite a savings actually. Or frankly, people that might live in some of like it, by the waterfront, who would be using the space instead of for the businesses and all that. So I do like the idea of some sort of a tag, some sort of a something.
Exactly.
I would just add that every time we give out tags and all of that, we don't ask for them back. And so, except for the railroad. So all these things that we do, stickers and tags, got to find a way to also make them time limit. For example, an employee leaves, whatever, they're just, then able to park in places. So just a little bit of thought on there. I don't know what in lieu of parking fund to the village code actually means.
Well, that's next.
I'm sorry, I'm reading.
No,
ahead
you're
of you.
fine.
No,
But
go
just
ahead.
in
I'll let you
regards to your
finish.
comment, I'm sorry, I hear somebody else talking.
No, I'll wait till you're done.
Okay, so that's an important distinction, Mayor. You're right. So this is regarding employees of downtown businesses that we're trying to move as per the study's recommendation and as per the business's requests to a place where they don't have to constantly be, putting quarters in the meter or moving their cars around in the free parking. But yes, certainly there's a recommendation coming up that might actually eliminate the need for a sticker, similar to what we've done with other kinds of parking. So we can get to that in just a minute. As far as the in lieu of parking fund, this is something that's come up
I'm
with.
sorry, Maddi. Before you go to that point,
Yeah.
can I ask you a couple questions in regards to Central Ave and employees? But I think
Yeah,
Bob
I got a
wanted to
question.
ask first.
Can we go?
Bob.
Yeah,
can
Bob,
we-
you were up there first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can we go? There you go. So I see these arrows. Are we putting spaces on the south side or the north side of Central Avenue? And my concern is the spaces by the firehouse. That
Right.
there should be at least 2 dedicated spaces for drivers.
Yeah, we can certainly work out the details. The presentation tonight is meant to just be an overview of what's going to be presented in chunks throughout the year next year, so that the board knows what type of legislation is going to be requested. This picture, the way that I did it, I'm not a pro like Jaime with the graphics, so this is really just a screenshot with some paint arrows in there. So this is not really indicative of exactly where the spots would be. But Trustee Fritchie, you're right. This would be on the same side that they're on right now. Unfortunately, right now we've had to move them to the opposite side of the street temporarily, but that is not going to be a permanent condition. But we can certainly carve out whatever the fire departments are going to require to make sure that they have access for trucks.
Like I say, it shouldn't. It's the headlines are fine. It's just the drivers when they're coming. Then again, if we move the firehouse, we won't need it anymore. But that's down the road.
Next presentation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Literally. Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm good.
Manny?
All right, thanks, Bob. And so Maddi, no, thank you. This is actually, it does make sense in a lot of different ways. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when I worked in Dawes Ferry a while back, they have employee parking in designated areas, blue tag, so blue area. The difference is, were you saying a no charge? I guess my question is, assumingly, when they park on the meters, they are paying for parking, correct? You know,
They are,
that's
yes.
the hope. Sure, if you're paying in a meter, if you're parking in a meter, they'll be paying. So in those ferry, what they have is obviously, I'm sure you're aware, they do have to prove your boss or your employer has to sign the application, goes through a process. There is a fee.
Right.
And I cannot remember how much is it. I want to say it's $120, $125, something along those lines.
Mhm.
So, but your proposal is not to charge employees.
Correct. So sort of the whole premise that Nelson Nygaard shared with us in terms of how to manage parking in this very distinct, tight area is about basically demand management. So you want to incentivize people to park further away so that they leave the spaces closer to the businesses for folks who want to pay. So for example, someone who's going to work a 6-hour shift at the deli, you know, they're going to be there for 6 hours. You don't want them glomming up one of the, you know, prime real estate spots. You want them to be a little bit off the beaten path. And I understand that Dobbs Ferry has something similar, but I think their downtown composition is a little bit different from ours. So this is certainly something that we could try in a variety of ways. But what was recommended was that this be basically just what there is now. It's the 2-hour free parking. It would just be extended to 8. And it is largely the employees of, I believe, the Ironworks who park on that stretch right now. I think sometimes folks from some of the other businesses on Lower Main park there as well. But certainly this would be a great option for them. And it would also be wonderful for us because then folks who were searching for parking to go eat at our restaurants would more readily be able to find it.
I wouldn't mind to try it out. Obviously, you know, at the end of the day, it becomes on the enforcement level, sure. You know, so I guess as a concept, I'm okay with that, not to charge employees, because I do understand we want to encourage them to go there to Central Ave and park there. So as a concept, I'm okay with it. I would like to try it out as a pilot portion at some point and go from there.
And that's certainly the best thing about, you know, as I mentioned earlier, most or all of these recommendations, because they're free and really the only cost is going to be staff time and signage, we can try everything. You know, we're not really married to anything here. We're not buying super expensive hardware, except for in one case. So if we try something for 6 months and it's a failure, no problem. We can start over and try the next thing. So we're definitely not married to any particular solution, but these were just the ones that we thought we could most readily achieve that would help provide some relief to our residents and businesses downtown.
Thanks, Maddi. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on Central Ave?
Just keep going.
Okay. So the next one, in lieu of parking for the village, is something that's come up with this board quite a bit. Basically, what this would do is if a developer was going to park either in a certain zone or in a certain neighborhood, and for whatever reason they were not able to supply the adequate parking as required by the code, they would be able to pay into an in lieu of parking fund. And this is something that the Board of Trustees would have to create by legislation. Nelson Nygaard has a lot of familiarity with doing these kind of programs. So they did actually give us a couple different examples of what they recommend. But in addition, they provided to us in the final report appendices, sort of a deeper dive into how we might go about setting up a program such as that. And they, you know, have told us they're willing to, you know, consult on that a little bit extra if it's something that we need, because they know it was a big village priority. So you can see the chart on the screen. This is, again, only what was recommended and certainly will be based on our community and our space needs. But what the recommendation was, if a developer needs to basically buy their way out of between 1 and 5 spaces, they would pay $5,000 per space into the in lieu of parking fund. And then you can see it goes from 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 plus. And basically, you know, again, these numbers are sort of fungible, but the point is that it would be paying for not only the construction of a new space, which we know is quite costly, but also the ongoing maintenance of wherever that space is going to continue to be. So that is something that, you know, again, Nelson Nygaard has offered their services with, but they've also provided a pretty comprehensive blueprint of how the board can approach this. And, you know, again, I know this is something that we've talked about, sort of chicken and egg. Is it better to do this first or build a structure first? Or, but Nelson Nygaard's recommendation was that we get started on this sooner rather than later. Does anyone have any questions on this part?
I'm not sure if the mayor does, but I do.
I don't have questions because I'm understanding that we're being given nuggets tonight that will have to be discussed. And this will have a lot of discussion when this
Okay.
comes up.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure the public understands our lack of asking or commenting is not agreement with the recommendation. Work sessions are oftentimes used, most times, used by staff to present to us ideas, concepts, studies, recommendations for legislations. So no one should confuse our lack of asking, or that if we shake our heads, it means we agree with all this. I suspect this piece is going to have lots of conversation on so many different levels. So it's not that whether I have comment or not. I don't have a comment tonight.
Thanks,
Manny?
Mayor. Yes, actually, I'll be in favor of something like this. Obviously, I would like to, whenever we have a deeper discussion on this particular topic, I can put additional more information into the context, but I'll be in favor of us having a conversation on this. I guess at some point of time, we have to be very specific, I guess, and maybe Stuart can help us, because there's two different things, sure, just for the board and for the people to know that there's two different areas where a developer will ask for relief of parking. One is through a variance going in front of the zoning board. The other one is going to the architectural review board or planning board to ask for an exemption on parking, and that depends on three different areas in our municipality. It's not everywhere. It depends on different factors. I think what this one is in particular is the one that goes in front of the architectural review board and the planning board to ask for an exemption. I don't want the board or the community to be confused that we are exempting this for a developer to go in front of the zoning board to ask for a variance. To me, that's totally two different separate topics. And with that, I'm gonna leave it alone so we can continue working on this presentation. So thank you, Maddi.
Sure. So the final recommendation under expanding the parking supply is something that, again, this board and prior boards have discussed, so I'm not going to belabor the point. Exploring redevelopment of the Main and Spring Street lots and then parking to offset the loss of those spaces. So in not only this study, but also the one that I believe was in 2003, the recommendation was pretty clear that if those lots were to be developed, meaning lots at the corner of Main and Spring, that the Brandreth Street lot, which you can see here circled, would be a fantastic place to offset that parking by way of a parking structure. So the reason it's being presented this way is that it really doesn't make sense to talk about one without the other. So I know that the board had been interested in continuing conversations about an RFP for the Main and Spring Street lots at some point in the future. And so that this recommendation is basically just getting that study process underway and considering the offset at the Brandreth lot. So now we're going to talk about expanding parking capacity. The first one is pretty easy. This is something that I think is really going to be touch and go. But one of the recommendations was that in any area where parking meter usage is less than 50% or occupancy rate is less than 50%, that we remove the parking meters. This is something that we sort of battled with a little bit with the consultant. Trustee Casada or Deputy Mayor Casada might remember. I think this is something we're going to have to try to see how helpful it is. But basically the recommendation was to remove the parking meters between Elizabeth and Bellevue on Croton Avenue because they were not really being used to the extent that they ought to be in a healthy parking environment. So the idea would basically be talk to the local business owners, get their feeling about it, and then bag the meters for 30 days and see what happens. Time limits would still be enforced, obviously. So if it's 2 hours, you could only stay for 2 hours. But the consultant's idea was, again, to try to incentivize folks to park a little bit further from the downtown core if they wanted cheaper parking. So I know it's a bit of a walk. That's why I'm not 100% convinced, but I think it's certainly worth a try. If the local business owners are game to try it for 30 days and see if and how it affects their business and the turnover, it is a recommendation that we could certainly try. And if it doesn't work, we can take the bags right off the meters and go back to normal. The next one is, again, lots 5 and 6, which is the Main and Spring Street lots, removing the free daytime parking. So this is showing where we're talking about. So now we're coming down Main Street, corner of Spring. This is lot 6, which during the day, these are all 3-hour free parking spots, or actually these are the ones here where it says Tompkins Mayapack. Those are permitted. So they're municipal lot day and night tags. In lot 5 north, 5 south, these are mainly 3-hour free spots, and these are a mix. So there are some permitted spots around the perimeter and in this middle, and there's a couple 3 hours free, a couple signage about 3 hours free on Saturdays, things of that nature. And basically the recommendation was, let's start dialing that back a little bit. We'd like to, again, going back to our initial conversation about Central Avenue, incentivize folks who plan to stay for longer or want to park more cheaply to park a little bit further away and make these spaces really be at a premium. So this is where the Passport parking mobile app will come in handy, because we won't have to buy any parking meters or anything for the lots until we really understand that this is what we want to do. So we would basically just hang up a sign, say this is a mobile only zone. So if you want to park here, you have to pay through the app. And those time limits would be enforced by our parking enforcement officers. We could start with just the permitted spaces, just to see what the temperature is like, and then we could proceed to all or half of the spaces. And again, that's something that we'll explore more fully once we get to that point in the process. Creating more resident parking opportunities downtown. So again, we're talking about potentially eliminating the municipal permit from those parking lots, because they're right centrally located and where everybody wants to be parking during the day. So we were thinking about where might those folks park if we wanted to move them just a little bit out of the downtown core. And one alternative is the C-Core lot, which I'm calling C-Core because I don't think everybody knows that that is Main Street, but it's between Main and C-Core. Currently, it's station parking only, but as you can see from the picture, and if you've driven by any time over the past 2 years, practically, it's not terribly well used. It's pretty far from the train station. It's a decent walk. And as you know, our village clerk will tell you, although things have improved, we don't have nearly as many people who are buying station parking permits as we once did. So being able to offer this as a daytime and nighttime municipal parking alternative might incentivize some people from the neighborhood closer to Main and Spring to park down here. Further, we get an awful lot of complaints from folks who live in this little section of Water Street that there's no parking available for them. Folks who have lived there for a really long time, folks that maybe have mobility issues and can't be going down to move their car every 2 hours. If you're familiar, the only type of parking here is 2-hour parking or train station. So if they don't buy a train pass, they have to move their car every 2 hours. So this might provide a solution for those folks, and then to also diffuse some of the parking from Main and Spring. And again, if it doesn't work, no harm, no foul, we can change it back. I'm sure that we have quite a bit of time before anyone parking from the train is going to be looking this far up the hill again. And finally, we got a request about this just earlier today. Add village-owned daily spots at the station. So any of the board members or members of the public who commute to the city can probably attest. No one really knows what's going on with commuting or offices, going back to full occupancy, or folks going in 1 or 2 days a week. Many of our residents have reached out and said that they don't necessarily feel comfortable buying a train station pass yet for next year, because they don't know if it's going to be worth their time. They might only be going in once a week. Things might shut down again. They really don't know, and they want to make a good investment. So there are currently a handful of spaces that Metro North runs as pay daily spaces. And the request, and something that we feel we can easily accommodate, is to add a bunch of daily spots, again, using the Passport mobile app, so as not to need to pay for parking meters. In speaking with the clerk's office, these were 2 locations we identified. Quimby Street, this is the lot off of Water Street next to Westchester Broadway Theater, not Westchester Broadway Theater, Westchester Collaborative Theater. It's 30-something spots, so we could start here, and then if it becomes very popular, we could also move to Quimby Street. This is a row along the building here off of Westerly Road that are village-owned spaces that we just worked out with Metro North. So basically, again, we wouldn't have to incur any investment by bond meters, anything of that nature. We could simply hang up the signs and have folks pay through the app for their parking for the day. Passport is actually the same app that the LAS parking at, further down at our train station uses. So folks could have the same app, not have to download something new. Managing parking demand. The first thing, aligning meter hours with demand. The recommendation is to start charging folks for on-street parking a little bit later in the day. And that is based on the study recommendations that basically say, see here, 9 a.m., if we're looking at, say, for example, Main Street, this is again, like where lots 5 and 6 are, you see that it's less than 50% utilized, these spaces at 9 a.m. If you go to 10 o'clock, a little bit more, and then a little bit more further at 11. So the idea is to sort of shift the bank of hours during which we charge for parking, again, to try to incentivize folks to change their behavior. So if you need to come and run a quick errand, go to the coffee shop, dry cleaner, you can do that and park in the spot free of charge before 10 a.m. And then finally, talking about the hardship parking permits, this is something that I know is on everybody's wish list, to replace the hardship or overnight parking program with something similar to what we've done for the train station and the muni lots, which is basically instead of doing the sticker and the permit on the car, we could move this process into the online program as well, which is something that can be read by the license plate readers, either the ones that are attached to the vehicles or the handhelds that our officers have. And it would basically attach the license plate to the permit. And so even if we did nothing else with hardship, which we certainly intend to, this is something that would make the administration much easier. It would also potentially eliminate the call-in feature that we have right now. So basically, if you are getting your driveway paved, if you don't typically park on the road and you need to do it for just one night, you call in, you leave a message, they put it in an Excel sheet. It's a little bit clunky. If we had them this way, people would be able to do it just for the night and it would show up in the handheld of the license plate reader and they wouldn't have to call in. Operational effectiveness. I'll try to speed this up a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm well over time. Vehicle mounted license plate readers, again, to monitor the hardship parking as well as station and municipal. This is what we're using now. They're working great. Refined digital chalking with handheld LPRs. This is a little bit more challenging. This is something that our parking enforcement officers are working with right now. But basically, instead of physically chalking a tire, you can do it using the handhelds and basically seeing where the tire stem is so that you don't have to physically mark the car. And that's a way that even in areas where we're going to have free parking or might have free parking, that time limits are still duly enforced. And finally, this is Deputy Mayor Quesada's favorite, I think, renaming of municipal lots. So as you can see from the map, currently our lots are numbered. They're not in any particular order that I can tell. There's a couple numbers missing over the years as properties have been sold or repurposed. The recommendation is to rename the lots into things that people will actually recognize to help with wayfinding. So for example, instead of saying, hey, there's free parking in lot 12, you would say, hey, there's free parking in the Eastern Avenue lot. So that would help, by way of wayfinding, particularly before we change the signage program. And finally, this is an easy one, alternative mobility options. Basically keep more cars out of downtown so that there are fewer parking issues to begin with. The first one is encouraging ride shares through 501 New York Rideshare. And the other is to continue to explore the all-electric circuit program to help transportation to and from the train station. We already have an outstanding relationship with 501 New York Rideshare. They work with us every year for Car Free Day. This is the kiosk that they brought to the community center where you can basically sign up to carpool with folks, sort of learn a little bit more about your options, and definitely something that I think more folks in our community might do if they knew it was available, safe and free. And then this is a little bit more about, the electric shuttles that we continue to research. Basically, they're all electric. They hire locally to be drivers. There's all different kinds of advertising packages that you can do to offset the expense to riders and to the municipality, or both. And so finally, then what? what's next? So for 2023, as I mentioned, updated and enhanced wayfinding signage. What I'm figuring is until we really know what we're doing with all of the parking lots, it doesn't make sense to spend money on signs. So perhaps get that set in stone before we go through that program. But Nelson Nygaard have some suggestions, which are in the report and in the appendix about different ways that we can help folks find the parking that is available. Pedal assist e-bikes. We're looking at all kinds of different alternative mobility strategies, and e-bikes seems to be the cool one that everyone around us is doing. So we're participating in a couple of different teams to learn about how we can bring those to Ossining. Improvements to walking
I
facilities.
have to say that they work. And I went up, I have one. And I went up the hill thinking, oh man, it's never going to make it up the hill. It does. So
I
it
believe
actually
it.
works.
Yeah, and pedal assist bikes have only more recently become legal in New York. I think the last time around a couple of years ago that we tried to do this, they were not legal. So hopefully that's something that
Well,
we'll be
there's
able
been
to-
accidents there,
Right.
you know. I'm almost tempted to say they should really in the city to ride those Vespas around, which is part of a rideshare program. You get huge discounts if you take a course, because
Mhm.
my daughter did, and she said it was actually really helpful. They're dangerous because, you know, they have this power boost, and if you're not in control of the bike and you're fooling around, you know, it's not like being in a car. It's not, you know. So and they've had accidents with them, and we have a lot of hills here.
Yeah.
But in my neighborhood, when I took and I went up some really steep hills, I mean, frankly, surprised that it actually does work.
Yeah,
It,
gives you good
it might
proof.
be something to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. Nelson Nygaard also gave us a pretty comprehensive overview of what we can do to improve our infrastructure for biking and walking to try to encourage folks to walk or bike rather than drive. That's not the sign I wanted. This one is. So basically showing where we can make specific improvements for safety and to encourage folks to walk instead of using a single occupancy vehicle. And finally, cost tiers for municipal and metered parking. This one is going to be a bit more controversial. It certainly was when we talked about it during focus groups and even with, I think, the deputy mayor and the trustees who participated. This is something that, again, demand-based pricing, making certain areas more expensive to park to try to incentivize folks to walk further if they want to stay for longer or don't want to pay as much. And because we think that's probably going to be sort of a heavy lift, we sort of pushed that off to the next stage of the project. I'm very sorry I went over my time. If anyone has any questions, I'll take them now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Maddi Zachacz. Very much appreciated. We've talked about studies and consultants. This, I think, finally gives us some real something to sink our teeth into. There were no costs associated with any of the projects. That's to come. What was the process of these are not 100% of the recommendations
No,
that were made.
these are about half of the recommendations, and really the only one that has any meaningful cost outside of signage would be the purchase of additional license plate readers, which I'm not sure if the chief wants to talk about how they're currently being used, but that's really the only expensive thing, over $1,000 or $2,000
Well,
in this
the
presentation.
electric cars for 20 are expensive.
That's something that, depending on the pricing structure, and we've sort of gone back and forth about this, if the municipality wants to offer the rides for free, then obviously there's a substantial expense. But if you want to charge, say $4 a ride, there's very little expense to the municipality. So it sort of depends on, what kind of a program you want to do. We've been trying to work out a pilot with these folks, but they've been in very high demand with COVID, as you might imagine. So we're going to keep working.
Well, there's also the human asset cost, not just the vehicle cost.
It would, they actually manage it. So that wouldn't be an expense that we bear, but.
Well, it's included in there. Okay, I'm going to let people ask questions. I didn't see a next steps, but I'm assuming the next steps is this will come in front of us in 2022, piece by piece. This was sort of a showcase. So my only question about how you guys chose it is, what was the process for choosing which items to throw away and which, because we didn't see everything. So there are things we didn't see, and you're choosing to curate for us the recommendations that Who made it? How was it done? What's the process, please?
Sure. So all the recommendations are listed in the final report that Nelson Nygaard published, which is on the village's website. And so again, they have them sort of grouped into those 5 sections that I went through in the presentation. And then they also have them at the bottom and sort of laid out in a different way with the quick wins, the short term, and then the long term. Some of it was just based on what seemed like something we could do rather quickly. Some of it, like specifically the train station daily parking, is because, as Clerk Donnelly can tell you, on a daily basis, we're getting requests for something like that. The reason something like that is included now, as well as the parking on Secor, is that anything that we want to do that has to do with the mobile parking app, if we do it all in one bundle, we don't have to pay for the signs. So if that's something that we can roll out in the next couple of months, we won't have to pay for the signs for that, and then there will be no cost. So a couple of things are just sort of informed by where we are in other parts of the process. But again, if it would be helpful, I can sort of just run out a bulleted list for the board later this week about all the different recommendations wholesale, and then sort of why these ones were cherry picked for 2022.
Because we're going to have to understand why someone's weren't recommended. I mean, that's always one of the pieces of it, right? Okay, that was it for me. Folks, questions, comments? I'm not seeing anyone.
I'll go quickly. I just want to comment to say that parking is one of the things that we most frequently get feedback about from the community of wanting to be improved. I just visited the new bookstore that opened near Main Street. It's amazing. You should definitely go. And one of the first things that they said was our customers are asking us about parking. So we came up with this little map of where they can go and making some recommendations. And for this kind of thing to come now, it's never a better time than now so grateful for the work that's gone into it everywhere from the waterfront through the rest of the village, the naming of the lots. I mean, there's a lot of really good things here, and I'm grateful for it and excited to get this rolling.
Thank you.
So, and I want to piggyback on what Omar said. So it's really interesting that we are talking about this right now. But as the mayor mentioned, this is just a presentation, and I would like to know what the timeline is for this. When are we actually going to have a deeper discussions on how do we move forward from here? You know, because now we're at the end of the year. You know, I would like to know, you know, the parking study was done several months back. There's a lot of projects coming up for next year. I just want to know where we stand on these projects.
Sure. So sorry, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. I just realized of the 13 recommendations, there are probably 6 that we could do within the first quarter of 2022. And what that is going to involve is basically, I know how much you guys love my memos, a more detailed memo that's going to outline some legislation that we're going to ask the board to pass. And so I think, you know, largely we can get most of this stuff done before the summer, assuming that the board agrees and wants to move forward. But as far as the timeline, everything that you saw tonight should be doable by this time next year. I don't see any reason why not. The wayfinding signage campaign, that's going to be a heavier lift. That's really going to require some community input. The lots will have to be renamed by then. We'll have to decide where we want train station parking to change. So that's definitely a larger project, as is the cost tiers. But everything else, you know, assuming that, you know, the board wishes to continue, is something that should be able to be pretty turnkey based on the deliverables from Nelson Nygaard.
So thank you, Maddi. So I guess
Am I not answering the question? I'm
No, you know,
Maddi,
honestly, there's like 12 months in a year. We meet twice a month. Legislation has to be written. There's some public meetings. The expectations has to be set, because if we had no other legislation to go over, we probably could get to all this 13 items in 12 months. So Stuart is waving his hand. So I just want to, 1 second. I just want to set expectation. This is a publicly recorded meeting. on its own, we could probably get all that done. We'll bundle 2, 3, 4 items, and there's assumption that we agree with most of it. If we don't agree and we want changes, it'll have to go back. So just like, I don't want to set expectations that this can happen very quickly. On the other hand, it can. I mean, theoretically, it can if we had no other projects that have similar timelines and similar requests of our lawyers and the board members and all that. So before people jump off the call and think, hey, this is great, 13 huge projects can be done, and in 2023, we're going to have these electric cars. I just want to reiterate, it is a recommendation based on a study. We haven't seen all the elements that go. We haven't bundled it yet. It's a presentation. So I'm only laughing. I love the enthusiasm. We have other initiatives that are also going to be folded in with some, and these will fold into others, and human beings theoretically work 40 hours a week, and then writing legislation doesn't happen as quickly as some people think they do. So with that, go ahead, village manager. I'm impressed with the enthusiasm, though. I'm loving it.
So there is a lot to unpack here, but there's some things that in going over this, and really we're really just drilling down a little bit on the recommendations that Nelson Nygaard made, but there's some things that we should think about doing very immediately because they are imminently doable, and even the ones that require legislation. So anything that we can do right now to offset parking, incentivize employees to park in different lots and do the tiered parking, I think really needs to be prioritized. That's what we get the most complaints about on a day-to-day basis. So if we're going to focus, the wayfinding signage, things like that can come. The e-bikes and the shared services, the other multimodal can come, but the things that really are probably the most burning desire of the community based on what we hear every day is making parking easier to find. And that means, and we actually had this conversation with people at Open Door the other day. If we can dedicate 8-hour parking in other parts of the village so we can free up the lots, and then we get the lots metered where they're currently not, that's huge. And I think that really is where we should prioritize over the next few months.
Great. So you can just rewrite some of that and give it an A, B, and C rating so that it's easier for the trustees to understand the prioritization that you're recommending. We may or may not agree with it on behalf of the public. I actually don't get those kind of complaints. We've gotten some train station because people want to save money. It's not about investments, is that they can get away with paying less because they're going in less. And the truth is that it's nice to see the study because there are many times of the day where there's actually quite a bit of parking. And then there's time when there is no parking. It really is a supply and demand by the hour kind of scenario. So I think it's great to have the data, not just people telling you what they think to be the truth. So I think a lot of this is really great. I would put in A, B, and C, taking into account that some things jump off others, that there might be something that may not be a high priority, but it's an easy thing to do because another project makes it successful at the same time. So you bundle them together for that reason. So great. Anybody else have anything that they want to ask, suggest, recommend, question, etc.?
No, I guess it's just as a general, like I want to piggyback on what Karen said. Some of the stuff that does not need to come in front of us as a legislation portion of it. You know, that's something that we should start moving along. You know, one of the things that we've been talking about, not for months, but for years, is about the overnight parking. Sure. Yeah. And how do we improve that? In the police department is a key department in this. You know, that's what we have. That's what we invest on additional scanners for the vehicles a couple of years back. So something like that, and because it's so it sounds simple, but it's a little bit complex because it does have to work with the app. It does have to work with the clerk's office as well, you know, and some of the other related items, but doesn't have to come. Correct me, please, Karen or Stuart or Maddi, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have to pass any legislation in regards to modifying those items, correct?
Not for hardship parking, no. It would be similar to what the clerk did with saying effective January 1st, you can only do this online.
Correct. so, little things like that, I think will come a long way as well. So I think it's the implementation and how will that move forward. So that will be, again, like the mayor said, bundle a couple items that are related to something else that do not leave legislation and we can try it out. I think that's the way I would like to see at least the first quarter of the year. Everything else is kind of, like the parking waivers, I want to call it, or the additional funding. That is a different discussion that the board will have whenever that comes in front of us again. So besides that, thank you, Maddi. That was a great
Thanks.
presentation.
I think the only more immediate thing that is relatively easy to do, but would require more board input and legislation is changing current tag parking and free parking to metered parking. And this is really the critical thing, and this is where we do have a lot of data from the study that we did, is that our highest demand parking is not always, we have a lot of, sort
It's
of a
not at its
hodgepodge.
highest and best. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the idea of really focusing on how to look at the parking that we have that is supporting the local businesses and make sure that that's flipping over as much as possible during the day so that people aren't getting frustrated and not shopping. That's where we do have a surprising amount of data, and we can make recommendations, but that would require legislation because it would involve changing spots that are now 3-hour spots or tag spots, and creating a metered parking system.
Maddi,
And when I say meter to charge, you would be doing it virtually, so you wouldn't necessarily have to install physical meters. It's just making it so that the parking in predominantly in the Main Street and post office lots just would turn over more quickly.
okay, thank you. Next.
Okay.
Thanks, Maddi. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Next, we have a Cabaret application for Tierras Tropicales.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. The chief is here as well. I sent you folks an email earlier today about this application and noted that of the 20 blotter entries that I received from Lieutenant Damiano, essentially none involved Tierras Tropicales. They were outside. Many involved the Atlantic Bar and Restaurant, but the only one for Tierras Tropicales, there were two. One was that someone had left their ID in the bar and it had then closed and he didn't have it. And the other was basically just in essence, a check by the police to make sure everything was okay. So I just wanted to point that out. Chief, anything you have to add, please?
No, nothing to add. I think that covers it all.
Okay. So I should point out, as I did, is that this application is only seeking to operate a cabaret 2 nights a week, Friday and Saturday, from shorter hours, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. The 2021 license is actually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. But again, even though we have 20 blotter entries for the street address of 84 Croton Avenue, none involve incidents at Tierras Tropicales.
Can you tell me again what they're asking for? I want to look this up.
It's a cabaret license.
I know that. The time is for what times?
10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Friday and Saturday.
All right, only 2 days a week.
Correct.
What was the other part of the other days till 2 a.m.?
They did Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This current license is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m.
So it's they're asking now for a change, for something that's different this year.
They wish to do fewer hours and fewer days.
Right, that's the part I didn't hear. Okay. Any comments or questions? So there's a consistency that we've done in the past. I'm just going to encourage the board to, as we go into the new year and people come in front of us, whether 1 a.m. should become the bar versus, sorry, to use a pun. Bar may not have been exactly the right word, but it should become the test, or whether we should keep it at 2 a.m. they're not asking for it. I'm just putting it out there. It's a work session. I'd like my colleagues on the board to think of that from the many calls that we get about whether it's noise and all other activities. The police only reports about calls that they get, and not necessarily things related to just what we all see and hear about ourselves. So I'm just putting it out there. This request is for 1 a.m. I'm fine with it. Is everybody else okay with it so that Stuart can move forward on it?
I'm okay with it also. I'm okay with eliminating Sundays on any of them, but that'll come up.
But that's not one they're asking for, but
I know that. I'm just
no, but Bob,
Going-
you're
going-
saying like I am that we should be thinking about that. You're recommending that we think about that going forward.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm
Anybody
okay,
else
I'm okay with what they're asking for.
with this one? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Is it only on my end that some of you are breaking up, or do other people hear
no,
that people are?
We're hearing
we
it
are
as well,
over here.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. And I guess the only, well, I'm assuming that Bill Department was okay. Karen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Dana, comments?
No, I'm in complete agreement with what they want to do. It's interesting that they want fewer hours and less days, but okay. Well, I think 1 o'clock is a good time. And I think we need to think about what happens on Sundays for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Stuart, I think that is, and thank you, Chief Sylvester, for your input on behalf of the police department.
Thank you.
You have what you needed, right?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on. Next topic.
Okay, the next topic, we've been working with Westchester County on a hazard mitigation plan. So the county has been working with all municipalities countywide to assess risks for various different disasters and emergency situations. We've been working as a team internally. So along with our Director of Planning, Jaime Martinez, and myself and Maddi Zachacz, we've also been working with Paul Fraioli and others. But right now we're going to have Jaime bring you up to speed with what we're doing with the county. And again, this is part of a countywide initiative to make sure that all municipalities are prepared in the event of various different types of disasters and emergencies that can occur.
Thank you, Karen, and hello to the board. I've not been here in a few weeks, so it's good to see you again. I'll jump right into the presentation. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. So the presentation, I can't take any credit for. This is the same presentation I think that the county gave, and the county has shared it with everybody, so I think that we can come and show it to you. So essentially, they've gone through this long process working with all the different municipalities throughout the county to help develop the Westchester County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it's going through a public hearing process right now. So, you know, a little background: hazard mitigation, what and why. Mitigation is sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to life and property from a hazard event. Hazard events are things like earthquakes, fires, wildfires, severe storms, things of that nature. So it includes actions taken to reduce future disaster losses, provides a plan to increase community resilience. And these mitigation plans that the county is working on is in large part to help save dollars. New York State alone has saved up to $10 billion in benefits, according to NYSDHS. An adopted hazard mitigation plan provides eligibility for FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grants, which is really important. In 2021, FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant, the BRIC program, is providing up to $1 billion in mitigation grant funding. So what's at risk? For Westchester County, the FEMA disaster declaration history in Westchester County since 1953 has had 27 disasters. That includes 7 hurricanes, 6 severe storms, 5 floods, 3 snow events, 2 biological, 2 other, 1 drought, and 1 fire.
What's a biological?
I'm not
Biological could be anything, I mean, biological is what we're going through now with a pandemic, potentially, or it could be other issues associated with health and disease, I believe.
Yeah,
Karen, you're correct. That's
that's
exactly.
exactly right. Yeah, the pandemic is definitely one of them, and I'm not sure what the other one.
What's the definition for two other?
I would have to go back to the mitigation plan to find that out. So I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
So what is the mission of the hazard mitigation plan? The mission of the Westchester County Hazard Mitigation Plan is to protect and enhance the health, safety, property, environment, and economy of the communities within Westchester County, and to increase resilience by partnering and planning to identify and reduce future vulnerability to natural and other emerging hazards in an equitable, proactive, and efficient manner. So overview about the hazard mitigation planning process. It was authorized by the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, provides an overview of the impacts of natural hazards on communities, provides a roadmap to reducing the impact of these hazards, requires a FEMA approved natural hazard mitigation plan to be eligible for pre-disaster mitigation funding, which is the process that we're going through right now. And there's a 5-year update required to maintain eligibility. So right now we're kind of in that stage where we're trying to get the update completed and get it through the final steps of the process, which is to get it adopted by Westchester County after public review. So 2022 hazards of concerns included in the plan are earthquakes, extreme temperature events, flood, severe storm, severe winter storm, wildfire, disease outbreak, chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear incidents. And lifeline facilities are reviewed to assess their vulnerability to hazards. So lifelines provide indispensable service that enables the continuous operation of critical business and government functions, and is critical to human health and safety or economic security. So plan adoption and timeline. The information is available right now. So if you wanted to check out the hazard mitigation plan, it's a pretty exhaustive document. You can find it at the www.westchesterhmp.com. If you're interested in finding out just specifically about the Ossining section, you can go down to one of the appendixes that has the Ossining section. That's about 37 pages longer, but it's a quick read. So it's a lot easier to kind of hone in on what's going on there. Draft sections will be posted for public review and comment beginning 11/15. That's last month. And so there are 30 days to respond. So there's only a few days left to go back and provide a response if you'd like to. But it has been heavily reviewed here internally by many staff members that Karen mentioned earlier. Plan after that will be submitted for review and approval by New York State DHSES and FEMA in November. And adoption of a plan by the community is required to be deemed approved by FEMA. So that's kind of the next step in the process. And just a couple.
Jaime, I'm sorry. Can you go back to that other slides, please?
Yeah.
So on that one, the draft plan section and the public comment on bullet point number 2, you said that's 11/15 of this year, correct?
Yeah. So it's been posted since November.
Okay, and is only good for 30 days?
The public review period is for 30 days. Yeah.
Okay, so who can comment on this? Anybody can comment on this?
Anybody, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Deputy Mayor. We have actually, Jaime put out a significant amount of stuff on social media encouraging folks to participate in this before the deadline.
Okay. No, thank you. And that's what I want.
It's also been in my mayor's letter.
Yeah, no, I want to emphasize.
I was just about to say that also.
Well, that's just another way, and it's not just me. It was even before me, but the readership of that is actually pretty high.
Yeah.
So
I just want to make sure that people understand that this is not, this is not just this presentation that we've been actually promoting this portion of this as well. So that's the reason why I asked Jaime to kind of bring this back on this portion. So thank you, Jaime. Thank you, Maddi. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. So a couple of key pieces to this. Just one last thing, kind of. There are 2 proposed projects that were presented in the HMP. They're sort of presented in there as options for sort of projects that we may want to apply for FEMA funding for later. One is the Rockledge Road Drainage Improvement Project, and it's to improve capacity of storm drainage system by increasing the size of the overflow pipe to 36 inches to allow system to handle more runoff during a storm event. And the second item is to promote and support non-structural flood hazard mitigation alternatives for at-risk properties within the floodplain, including those that have been identified as repetitive loss or RL, and severe repetitive loss or SRL, such as acquisition, relocation, or elevation, depending on feasibility. The parameters of this initiative would be funding, doing a benefit versus cost analysis, and finding out about the participation of the owners and whether they're willing to participate. The areas that are specifically identified for this are the 3 repetitive loss and the 1 severe repetitive loss properties along the Hudson River waterfront, down by the by our sort of waterfront section of the village. And there's also a couple projects that were mentioned. One being that Rockledge Avenue and Revolutionary Road Stormwater System project that I just mentioned, as well as the Kilbrook Stormwater Project, which is sort of tied into the DPW redevelopment project. So. Can y'all hear me, or did you freeze? It looks like everybody's frozen.
No, it's just like a lot of stuff. It's not necessarily so easy to understand as, you know, who pays, what's the process. I have to reread this thing. I looked at it when I had the link for it, and I just haven't looked at it recently. I mean, this isn't something you put together. It's a presentation FEMA is putting out there through the county, right?
Yeah, the county put it together, I think, with their consultant, Tetra Tech, and so
Right.
Relaying the information.
So I assume in every municipality it is probably some project or two.
Yeah, just to offer an extra little bit of context, this is something that Westchester County got a grant from New York State Department of Homeland Security to do a sort of a consortium between the Westchester communities. And typically we're supposed to do it every 5 years in order to stay in compliance and
Right.
be able to apply for FEMA funds. Obviously, because of COVID, they got knocked back a little. And this was a Herculean effort to put this together, because they would basically email us on Monday and say, by Friday, we need XYZ. So between Paul, Joe, Jaime, we really did a lot of work on this to update the annex, identify projects, things that have changed since the 2015 plan, yeah, there's a lot here. And I also do want to point out that because the public comment period is still open through the 17th, we decided that it would be best not to have the board consider this for adoption until January. So there still is some time to provide written comment if the board, sees something, maybe in one of the projects that they'd like reworded or something of that nature. But it has been sort of I don't want to say rushed, but it's been a condensed process. So, for forgiveness is requested for being a little bit hurried in this.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Questions? You could take this off, Maddi. Oh, who's doing this? Sorry. Jaime. Comments?
I guess we can look at the details of the project itself and see if we have any additional comments. I think that would be helpful as well as an overall conversation. And we can, if Maddi says that we can wait until next year, talking about, I'm sure, the beginning, I'm hoping.
Oh yeah, no, it was supposed to have been adopted in December, but because the public comment period doesn't close until the 17th, they told us it's okay if we adopt it in January.
In January.
I mean, part of it is if we don't do this every 5 years, we don't stay eligible. It's more of a, I don't want to call it a process issue, but at the end of the day, FEMA wants to say, okay, you guys get this and you're interested, because if we don't hear that you're interested in us, and we have 50 states, so so I think part of it is a process issue. I'd like to see them do more environmental stuff like storm water gardens and all that, instead of just talking about increasing 36 inches to larger so that you have larger drainage rather than using the environment, especially where we live. I meant to make a comment. I might comment on that. I don't know if we sent this to some of our stakeholders when we did the social media. Did we send this out to some like Green Oceaning and some of the other organizations that are usual cast of many organizations that are involved?
Jaime is not on the call tonight. I will check with her, but if not, we will do it tomorrow.
With maybe a point to say, please look at the Oceaning and please add your comments because that's what's being asked here. But primarily it's also to stay in the process of every 5 years.
And also identify potential grant opportunities. So the projects that we've listed, if grant funding does come up, we'll be able to reference, hey, we talked about this in our hazard mitigation plan to kind of lend some more credence to the project and hopefully be more successful in getting funding for it.
That's a big consideration because if our input wasn't there, we would likely not be able to get that funding. So
right.
If it comes up.
I guess I have one more question. So we as a board, can we comment as a board, as a municipality, or no?
Why would you need to though? Wouldn't you just put Trustee Manny Casada on your
We can
comment?
do that
And all
as
five
yeah.
of us could do it.
Yeah, we
but
can do that as an individual, but I'm asking if the five of us, it would be to me, it would be a little bit of a stronger comment if that would be the possibility. I'm just asking as a general question.
We can, I can reach out to our rep from Tetra Tech, who's the consultant in the morning, and see what the process would be if in fact the Board of Trustees wanted to make sort of a unified statement. Would you be just making an overall comment or potentially changing content in the annex or both?
I think it will be both in a way, but again, I will kind of go back to the rest of the board and see depending how they feel as well. If it's possible, one question, if it's possible, then yes, and then we'll kind of go back to the board and be like, all right, what is the five of us suggested and how do we comment on any other points?
Okay, yeah, I will find that out first
comment
thing.
as an individual, not as a trustee. I'll comment as an individual myself, but I think it will weigh in more as I would assume as a board.
Right. I'll find out first thing tomorrow if it's possible, and if so, what is the process and the timeline, and I'll get back to you because I'm sure the deadline is probably soon if it is possible. So
no problem. Thanks,
yep.
Maddi.
Okay.
Okay. Next, Plateau Associates has made a request for extension of a planned waterfront special permit. So I'm going to turn this over to Corporation Counsel.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, folks. I sent you an email earlier this afternoon with regard to this application. Let me be clear, no action is being sought from the board at this time. This is a request by the applicant for an extension of the planned special waterfront permit, which permit expires on December 11th. It is also the expiration date of the zoning variances. The reason that no action is being sought at this time is because the applicant will be returning before the planning board with a new site plan application. Since the site plan approval expires on the 31st of December, and there is no possibility that the applicant will receive a building permit by that date. As I noted in my earlier email, the applicant had advised us a couple of months back, actually a couple of months back, myself and the planning director, that he had entered into an agreement with a development company to essentially work as a joint venture with regard to having this project developed. The planning director and I met with the applicant, or met with the folks from Plateau, as well as with the development company, made it very clear that December 31st was in essence, a drop dead date with regard to the site plan, because they had already received 2 extensions, and under our code, they cannot get a third. They would have to start the process again. And it was also made very clear that once they start again, they will then become they will have to comply with the village's freshwater wetlands ordinance. which was not in effect at the time they received all of their prior approvals. So as a result, the applicant will be starting the process again. It's not exactly sure when. They have retained new counsel, Janet Giras and Ann Klein from the firm of DelBello Dunellen represent them now. And they will be coming back for that site plan review, which has to be preceded by the wetlands review. At this point, anything with regard to an extension of the planned waterfront permit or the variances are all being held in abeyance because it is not known at this point how the wetlands ordinance will affect their variances, how it will affect the site plan, how it will affect environmental review, and how it will affect the conditions that this board has already placed in the current permit. So that's really what's going on with this project. We await filing from the applicant, but what is clear is that there will be a new application for site plan approval, and everything will flow from that. That application has not yet been filed, but they do obviously have to deal with the wetlands. There is also the pending permit application before the Army Corps of Engineers. It is unclear when the Army Corps will issue its decision, whether to grant and or deny or grant with conditions the permit that is being requested. But again, we do now have a wetlands ordinance, which was not in effect at the time the original approvals were granted. So the applicant very much aware that they have to comply with that. They have said that they will, and we await that. At this point, as I said, as I wrote in my memo to you, there were numerous conditions that were placed in the planned waterfront special permit. To date, none of those conditions have been met, and we await the applicant's next actions, and that's basically where it is. The applicant is aware that basically their application is in, but that I would indicate to the board that no action should be taken at this time, since the ball is in the applicant's court to start moving with regard to wetlands.
When does it come in front of this board, if ever?
When they basically start doing their wetlands application, it can come back before this board, but not before that. The fact that they filed their request for an extension before December 11th, the policy has been that where an application for an extension is filed before the expiration date, that application is considered timely. But again, because there may well be significant changes as a result of the wetlands ordinance and how it applies here, the better thought was to basically hold everything in abeyance until we get through the wetlands portion of this matter. And the applicant and his counsel are aware of that.
The applicant and his counsel have been aware of many things over many years.
Well, this is a new attorney.
Had that too. So,
Mayor,
okay.
I'm just trying to provide
Alrighty.
information.
We're gonna keep moving. Anybody else?
I do have a question for Stuart. Since that they have to go back to a new site plan, will that within itself eliminate or avoid the special permit for Martin? Because
No,
it totally is irrelevant, because right now they're approving.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
I can answer at least where they have conveyed to us.
It expires in 4 days.
They
Can I just
conveyed
finish?
to us that they're
Can I
going to submit.
please, Jaime, can I please just finish? Please. So Stuart, the conditions that we had on the original plan is based on the existing site plan.
That is correct.
So now that they have to go back to me, they have no special permit. So I would either Stuart or Jaime, now you can please answer that question.
Jaime, if you wish, I know you were saying something. So.
Yeah, so they have conveyed that they're going to submit a new application that is identical to the old application. So they would have to go through the entire process again, except it would be a new application under the wetlands ordinance, which has implications on what they're trying to do for sure. But they have not conveyed that they have any intention of changing the design or the layout of the building at this point.
So again, since that there are new regulations in regards to the wetlands, Jaime, do you, as an expert, I want to say, as our planning director, do you proceed any modifications to the existing or to the proposed or to the past approvals on the site plan? And I don't want you to talk on behalf of the planning board, because that will be at the end of the design, but because of the regulations that we have put in and established this past year, I'm assuming that there are going to be some changes, correct?
So I think that if somebody was coming in brand new with this application, that it would not be designed at all the way that it is designed now. I think you're 100% correct in that. I think that they, despite that, they have conveyed that they don't intend on changing the designs and they plan on pushing forward with an application, despite the fact, and that may just be because they haven't reviewed sufficiently the wetlands permit to understand the sort of extent of what they're asking to do. But our last conversation was that they plan on submitting it exactly as it is. If somebody came to the door today and said, I want to move a river, a little stream, I would say that's probably not a good idea.
No, I understand that. So again, so to me, regardless of what they're why they're trying to submit as their application, which is the same old application, there are going to be changes made. We know that based on the new regulations that we have. Even if it's a minor changes or not, that changes to me, that changes the site plan. So it goes back to the question that I was asking Stuart. If it would, the special permit expires at the end of the month.
No, the special permit expires on
Saturday.
December 11th.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It expires on the 11th.
December 11th. The site plan expires
4 days,
December
3
30th.
days from now.
Okay, so it expires this month.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that avoids the whole special permit. That literally, to me, they have nothing. So,
Correct.
if they have nothing, to me, they have to start, the whole project starts from day one. That will be my understanding. So, the zoning board meets next week. Are they going in front of the zoning board to appeal their case as well?
There will be, and Jaime, I don't want to speak for you. I know they are on the zoning board agenda next week. I know their counsel will be there. And they similarly understand that there will be no action taken by the zoning board, because in that case in particular, the variances may well be subject to change as a result of the wetlands ordinance, but we can't know that until we get an application.
I totally understand that. But again, the variances will expire this month as well.
Correct.
So there is not going to be a special meeting just to meet with them this year either. So to me, they have nothing by the end of the year. All their approvals pretty much will expire. At least some of the approvals will expire, I should say.
So I think it's important to note here what Stuart mentioned earlier about them having a timely application for an extension. And Stuart has recommended that we hold it in abeyance until we have a full application in front of us. So technically they would be eligible to apply for a zoning variance, but the zoning variance is only one component of the approvals. The special permit is a very large component of the approvals. So no, they would not be starting fully at scratch yet, but they would be almost at scratch.
Okay.
So can I, Manny, you
Yes,
done?
please.
Or?
Go ahead, Bob. No, I'm not done. Trust me, but go ahead.
No,
Bob.
I just want to shed a little light, and Stuart, you know this as well. I was on the board when the variance was granted with conditions,
Yes, sir.
and no conditions have been to date. So how are they going to go back in front of the zoning board if they couldn't even handle the conditions? The special water permit, that expires on the 11th. So as far as we're concerned, we don't have to do anything until they come back in front of us. But how are they allowed to go to the zoning board if they've never met any conditions? Well, they've done nothing, so I guess they could go. But then the zoning board needs to pay attention to what conditions were laid out on the first variances.
That's 100% correct, Trustee Fritchie. That is correct.
That's all I got to say. Thank you.
And to piggyback on that one, Bob, to me, while we are allowing them, in a way, it's like we freezing their permits for now and allowing them time frame, until next year, because that's what's going to happen. Sure, until next year for them to start working on something. It just like Bob said, they haven't done nothing. It's not like this just happened yesterday. They knew that their approvals were expiring this year. They knew that the site plan cannot pretty much have an additional extension. They were aware of this.
Yeah, but
We've been doing this for over 10 years.
But we purposely lined the special water permit. to
Exactly. We
expire
even
in
extend
December.
that stuff. We even extended more than what we were supposed to.
We
even with
did,
the special permits.
We didn't go the full 8 months or whatever it was. We went to line it up in December. So when everything expires, and they got to start from scratch again, and they're going to have major changes.
I wouldn't
Okay.
be. I
If
wouldn't
they
be
do
in
anything.
favor. Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of doing anything else to this project. If they're going to have to start over again next year, that's I
Stuart,
wouldn't want to contain anything
Stuart,
else.
Yes, Mayor.
I think what we're seeing, what's said and what's not said. I think what's not being said, although I think there is an understanding, is that the left hand has to know what the right hand is doing. I'm feeling a concern that the zoning board and the staff and the attorneys need to understand the entire process and not let this go much further the way it is.
Mayor, there's
So-
not much we can do at this point. There really is not. I, with all due respect, they understand the key document, which is their site plan approval, runs on December 31st. They know they have to start again. There is nothing more that we can do at this point. Literally, there's nothing more. This is their project. They know their dates are running. Jaime and I explained this. They were very much aware. I should point out that Jaime and I got the distinct impression that the person they were hoping to have as a joint venture probably didn't know all of this when he got into it. And now that's why he's no longer here. So, but they know December 31st, that's it. There is no extension. It was made clear. They have to start their process again.
Okay,
zoning
I don't think the they in my sentence is the developer. I think the they is the zoning board. And
The
it's
zoning board, Jaime will be there on Tuesday night, and Land Use Council was at some of these meetings. They are very much aware of
Okay.
precisely what's going to happen.
Okay, we'll see.
So, yeah, on Tuesday, we'll be laying out the full details for the zoning board. It is a very strange project.
All right, so I guess on Wednesday, I'll see if in fact, this side of the equation, not the developer, this side of the equation understands the issues and articulated them. Right, Manny? That's your point at the end of all of this? Okay. What's next? We're not being asked to do anything, folks. This is informational. Right? Stuart?
Correct, Mayor.
Okay, it's informational, so we appreciate it. Firehouse consolidation study under, Maddi Zachacz has her name on a lot of things tonight.
Well, actually, I
exciting.
think I'm gonna give Maddi a little break here. So we had a meeting, although this is really something that we've been working on, and Maddi and I have been discussing this with Trustee Fritchie, because if you remember a few months back, we did a grant for a consolidation study to look at the firehouses, and we still are waiting to hear back on whether we are awarded that grant. We anticipate that we will know. Typically, they make those announcements before the end of the year. So we anticipate that's pending. However, if you remember, it was not
Losing you a little bit.
sorry. It was not a huge grant. And this is something we'd like to move forward with regardless. So we went back and Maddi and Trustee Fritchie and I met earlier this week and discussed what was done in 2009. We have a pretty comprehensive study of the overall operational administrative study of the Austin Fire Department. And there was a section that discussed consolidation. And one of the reasons that consolidation was discussed is because, as you know, we have several firehouses and some are not equipped currently to handle apparatus as they need to in this day and age. Some of them were started, were built when there were horses, not actual.
Literally, I think you mean.
Literally.
We live in the Northeast, so when we say horse and carriage, like the entire, I think not the Taconic, but the Soma, some of the highways are actually built for horses and then they just poured tar on them. You meant that literally.
I do mean that literally. And, it was noted at that time, and the study was done in 2009, that monitor hose and steamer hose, definitely, and monitor hose right behind, really weren't equipped to function the way they really should be able to in this day and age. And the idea was floated then to do some consolidation where you can maybe sell those properties and then move forward. And at the time, there was a new house being looked at potentially in the town of Ossining because there's always been an issue. The town doesn't have a fire station, and we want to make sure response times throughout the village are good. I will say that the Ossining Fire Department then and now has outstanding response times. The other consideration was to improve north side and possibly independent hose. And really, I think it's time to look at this again. The study is over 10 years old, and the buildings are not getting any younger. Technology is moving forward very quickly, and we want to make sure that our fire department has the facilities they need to operate as efficiently and effectively as possible, and also the things in those buildings that they need to maintain their personal safety as well. So regardless of whether we get the grant or not, we think that we should go forward with looking at this issue again. And right now, we're not asking the board for a decision because, again, we want to wait and see whether we get the grant, because it'll affect at least how we do the procurement of the study. But in either case, we would want to issue an RFP reflecting the scope of work that builds on the 2009 study. And we would seek we would look at a study that would seek to determine the best strategies for consolidation, including a financial analysis of viable options, including stakeholder engagement, particularly all the companies we would want input from and the community, and as well as an implementation plan and project timeline that would include the roles and responsibilities of each vested stakeholder. And that would include the village companies, the private owned houses right now, and the town and village government. So that's where we are. So we just wanted to bring this to mind because we do have a lot of things on the calendar, a lot of projects, but this project, as with all our projects, fits in together as a piece of the puzzle that has to do. It impacts Main Street, it impacts health and safety, and ultimately, it will have significant impacts for the fire department in terms of their efficiency and effectiveness. And there's cost implications as well. So Trustee Fritchie, Maddi, if I missed anything, please chime in.
No, you pretty much covered it. It's something long overdue. And I believe, I don't know if anybody sitting on a board, maybe Manny might have seen this, maybe not. Yeah, because he's the oldest on the board anyways. But if you ever read this, I have it. All right. And it's this thick. I don't know if you can see it, but it's big.
I'm estimating 3 inches based on what I'm just.
Yeah, basically. So it makes for good reading when I got nothing to do. So it's long overdue. and the needs and the NFPA stuff that falls into place and the equipment that you're supposed to have, the exhaust systems you're supposed to have. They put a Band-Aid down at headquarters. They put these filters up. So when the doors go up, it's supposed to take care of it. It's not, you know, I have to go to a meeting Friday over in Rockland. All right. And I'm going to video that firehouse. Yes, it's a different world. They're districts. All right. But they're up to snuff. All right. We are not even close. Any of the buildings, even our newest building headquarters. Monitor hose, you need a shoehorn to fit the truck in. It's just, we've put a Band-Aid on it for too long. And this is definitely going to shed some light on what needs to move forward. And the consolidation is good. You know, if we put the three companies on the north side, if we take Monitor and Steamer and Independent, put them somewhere on the east side of the village where they belong. Steamer belongs up there. Steamer's on Central Avenue because that's where the guys lived when they opened the place. They were the closest to the horses. And that's a true story. So, but I believe once you see this study, it'll definitely open your eyes and make you understand what really the needs are for this department. So, but I want to thank Karen and Maddi for their work. I'm in favor of moving forward with at least the RFP. And then when we find out about the grant, we'll go from there, I guess.
Thank you, Trustee Fritchie. I sort of want to echo that. You know, I actually got a chance to read it when we were applying for the CFA grant. It's a fascinating study. It's really very interesting. And, you know, we realize how fortunate we are in having what is probably the largest all-volunteer fire department in the state. But the particularly interesting thing about the last study, which I hope we will get a taste of, at least in the next version, is sort of the composition of our volunteer base and what makes them motivated to volunteer, and, you know, how they might be incentivized to continue volunteering. So really, really interesting stuff. Really excited to get started. Thank you.
Yeah, just one other thing. We're kind of our own worst enemy, the fire department, because we make it work. And we make it work because we care about our residents. So you'll hear us complain sometimes, but it's, you know what? We still make it work. And I tell these guys, we're our own worst enemy, but you know, times have changed, and we're fortunate that our retention is very good. I mean, there isn't too many meetings that go by that someone's being voted in, but retention's big, and it's you know, having a place for them to go, and a building that's up to code and up to snuff. It's very important, very important. But so that's my 25-cent story. Thank you.
Okay. What is the board being asked for?
So
I know this is an update. I get that, but what's
so when we find out whether or not we get the grant, which we anticipate will be within the next several weeks or month or so, at that point we would want to make a decision either way to proceed. Without that information, we really just are putting this on the table as something else we might want, you know, the board should consider going forward. But until we know the grant, it really doesn't make sense to make a decision, because that will impact how we would go forward in the procurement, and some of the processes that we may have. You know, there's pros and cons. The grant would point us in one direction. You know, if we decide to do it on our own, we may take, you know, we may look at the old study and revisit and do things a little differently. Either way, once we know whether we're getting that funding or not, we think that this is a pretty important initiative. It really isn't about a shiny new house. It's really about making sure that we have the facilities that best address the needs that we have today. And when we say that these, you know, some of these houses were built at a time when there were horses, and we certainly don't have horses anymore. And there's also a lot of considerations too. And if you look at the hazard mitigation study talks about things well beyond fire that the fire department engages in. So if you're talking about just fires. Generally speaking, we have old buildings, asbestos and is in these buildings. So making sure that we have the right decontamination suites and making sure that we also have the ability to be prepared in the event of any emergency. We're due for an upgrade there. And the best way we can do it is, given the amount of real estate we have with actual firehouses, that's valuable. Consolidating that could provide a significant amount of resources to make sure that in the consolidation, we end up with really state-of-the-art facilities.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think it's Bob has spoken about this before, so this rises a little bit higher up. We have a lot of initiatives for 2022, but it's the whole point of these conversations is to start lining up priorities, bundling things where they make sense and lining them up. All righty. What's next?
So we are complete.
Yeah, I was just looking through this. Sorry, lost my little spot.
We're on to the special meeting now. So
No, Karen,
Did I miss
procurement
something?
policy. Please.
Procurement.
I'm sorry.
Procurement.
Revised, I'm sorry, I'm really not with it tonight. I apologize. We have a revised procurement policy. Excuse me, Corporation Counsel. I did not mean to cut you off the agenda there.
Oh, it's nothing at all. Folks, I've provided you, and I actually sent you an even more recent version later, just before the meeting. The village does have to adopt annually a procurement policy. I have sent the proposed revision to the procurement policy to the board, as well as to most department heads, including DPW, Recreation, Police, and Dale as treasurer. The revised procurement policy clarifies a few things, makes reference to the recently passed best value role that we have now. Further explains the idea of the emergency procurements and the very limited circumstances when you can do an emergency procurement. Has a much more detailed on the issue of sole or single source procurement, which we do allow, but this goes into more detail, and also provides for a protest policy in the event that someone wants to protest either the bid itself or the RFP or information contained therein. And finally, there's a section on procurement ethics to go into there. The procurement policy is traditionally adopted at the reorganization meeting. At next week's meeting, there will be a discussion of the reimbursement policy, which is something we discussed a few weeks back. But the procurement policy happens to be a bit longer, and now with some of the changes is longer still. So I did want to get this before the board so that they could look at it. And if they have any questions, obviously let me know. What I have done here is I have also provided you, and everything that's changed is in red, but I've given you where some of this language comes from, various towns and counties and cities throughout the state. But I think it's more odd being longer, but it's a more concise policy now, and goes into certain topics that we did not really detail before or did not detail sufficiently before. And I think that that's important so that folks who are using this policy, both from the village end and both from people who are coming in here to bidding on policies, can deal with it. There is now a reference in here to the fact that with many of our professional bids, we are now going to be doing RFPs on a triennial basis. And in fact, one of the things we'll be discussing during executive session deals with litigation defense counsel, which was also subject to RFPs this past couple of weeks. So that's what the procurement policy is. Again, I'm available to answer questions. I realize it's a lot to look at and with changes, but I did have one small question from Paul with regard to issues dealing with RFPs, but otherwise, again, it's here for you folks to look at. and hopefully it can be adopted at the January reorganization meeting. So
So Stuart, when you click through and look at the procurement, there's not a lot of red on there. There's only one. Okay, there's like you go down to 5. Oh, I see. It goes farther down than I went. It's all red. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, gotta read it for my bedtime story tonight. Okay. Great.
So thank you all.
But still, it's in the org meeting, the reorg meeting, the first meeting of January. This is just a heads up because there's so much for us to look at, correct?
Yes, and because ordinarily we just take it from one year into the next, this will be a significant change.
Yeah.
Same with next week's discussion relating to reimbursement policy.
Is all of that, because the policy, all of that's going to have to be read into the public record out loud?
No, the policy doesn't get read in. It's just that we just
Yeah, we approve it.
they just adopt the policy. It does not get read in. It's here. It's made part of the minutes of the reorg meeting, but we do not ask the clerk to read the entire policy into the record.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand whether I'm drinking coffee or herbal tea that night. That's all.
No, because if you remember in the past, Mayor, for example, the village's investment policy is like 7 or 8 pages that is never read into the record.
Okay. Great. Let me click out of it because I started reading parts of it. All righty. So that takes us to.
Can we have a motion now to adjourn the work session and to go into the special session?
Folks,
So move.
Second.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are
Ladies,
now-
can I just say good night to people because we're going into special?
We're not,
Nope, we're not leaving
we're
this
not going
room.
into exec, Mayor. We're just going, it's the
We're
same.
staying
Zoom.
on the same Zoom?
Same Zoom.
Very exciting.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just to get everything correct here, I will take attendance because we are now technically going into a special meeting, which is really just an extra legislative meeting, but for tonight. So if it's okay with everyone, Trustee White,
Present.
Trustee Fritchie,
Present.
Trustee Lopez,
President,
Deputy Mayor Quezada,
Present.
and Mayor Levin.
Present.
Okay, we've done the call to order, we've done the pledge, we've done the roll call. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board on agenda items only? They will be accorded 1 4-minute opportunity to address the board on such resolutions that are on the agenda. If you do wish to so address the board, please raise your virtual hand. And Maddi, I guess you'll let me know if there is anyone.
I have one hand so far. Leah Nelson, I'm going to move you over as a panelist. Once you come over, please unmute and turn on your camera, and then we will start the clock.
Hello.
All right, Leah, we see you. We just need you to unmute.
There she is.
There you are.
I just wanted to commend you on your appointments to this committee. I think you made a really great choices, and so that's about it. I don't want it 4 minutes or anything. I just wanted to say thank you, and I think this is going to be great for the community. So thank you.
Okay.
I had
Leah.
my mute on. Thank you very much. We don't have to take all 4 minutes, so thank you.
All
Who
right,
else do
Leah,
we
I'm
have?
moving you back. I do not see any other hands at this time.
Okay.
Well, this would be the time. I just want to remind folks it doesn't go back and forth. So this is my little tap dance of a minute or so to let people raise their hand if maybe they blinked or they missed it. And not seeing hands. Okay, Stuart, please.
Thank you. Resolution A, creation of Police Reform Advisory Committee. Whereas between July 2020 and March 2021, the Village of Ossining undertook a comprehensive review of its police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices following the issuance of Executive Order 203, directing local governments with police agencies to perform a comprehensive review of practices and policies to promote fair and transparent community-oriented policing strategies designed to eliminate racism and racial disparities. And whereas the Board of Trustees retained a consultant and appointed members of a working committee to develop recommendations relating to policing for consideration and discussion by the public and the Board of Trustees. And whereas a 29-point plan was developed based upon consultation with stakeholders and the public. And whereas the Board of Trustees approved the plan, which included many but not all of the working committee's recommendations, which plan was then submitted to the division of the budget as required by the executive order. And whereas the plan included a recommendation that to monitor the plan's implementation, the working committee be continued, or that the Board of Trustees create a new committee. And whereas the Board of Trustees considers that the creation of a new committee known as the Police Reform Advisory Committee is appropriate. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining creates the Police Reform Advisory Committee, whose function will be to review the plan's progress, to report to the Board of Trustees on the process for implementing the plan's recommendations, to recommend changes where necessary, and to evaluate the working committee's suggested recommendations, which recommendations were not adopted by the Board of Trustees in the plan. And be it further resolved that the makeup of the Police Reform Advisory Committee will include no fewer than 9 and no more than 15 members, 1 chair and 1 vice chair. The Corporation Counsel or designee shall serve as legal advisor to the advisory committee and shall attend each meeting. In addition, the Corporation Counsel or designee shall serve as the secretary to the committee, assisting in the preparation of meeting agenda, minutes, and dissemination of materials. Meetings will be held monthly and will be open to the public. The chair and vice chair will be appointed by the Board of Trustees to terms not exceeding 2 years. The chair and vice chair shall not simultaneously serve as the chair and or vice chair of any other board, commission, or council of the village or town of Ossining. Advisory committee members shall be appointed to a term of 2 years, commencing on January 1 and ending on December 31. Committee members shall serve no more than 4 consecutive 2-year terms. For the committee's first year, a number of appointees to be determined by the Board of Trustees will be appointed to a 1-year term subject to reappointment. The advisory committee, by the chair and or vice chair, will report to the Board of Trustees at least twice a year on the progress of implementing the recommendations and on such other issues as requested by the Board of Trustees. Advisory committee members may meet remotely or at any village-owned building. All advisory committee members must be at least 17 years of age. The Board of Trustees will appoint as 1 member of the advisory committee an individual recommended by the local Ossining chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. If that member leaves the NAACP or the advisory committee, the NAACP will nominate another member for appointment by the Board of Trustees. There will be at least 1 member from a local faith-based organization. There will be at least 1 member from the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board. There will be at least 4 men of color on the advisory committee. At least 1/3 of the advisory committee will self-identify as male, and at least 1/3 shall self-identify as female. Advisory committee members shall be residents of the village of Ossining and the unincorporated portion of the town of Ossining. It is anticipated that at least 60% of the appointed advisory committee members will be residents of the village. The Board of Education will be invited to nominate a representative of the school district to be a member of the advisory committee. Advisory committee members must attend at least 75% of meetings held during the year. Meetings will be scheduled in advance and publicly noticed. The mayor shall serve as ex officio member of the advisory committee. Additionally, 1 member of the Board of Trustees shall be appointed by the mayor as the board's liaison to the advisory committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments from the board?
No comments, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
No comments on mine.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. Stuart, I know you said there was a 4th or 5th bullet where you said the word 1, but it's actually not written in there.
Yes, that'll be.
You'll just
It'll
change
be
that?
revised. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure. That's fine. I think it could be left there. The mayor will be ex officio, et cetera, et cetera. That's actually a given on all committees, is my understanding, for mayors. I'm not sure it needs to be written in because I think that is actually how the committees work, except for the 2 land use, I believe. If that's not correct, that's what I've always been told. If I'm wrong about it, you can leave it in, but we have to go back to the other committees and see if it's needed to be added there too. So isn't the mayor always ex officio?
I think
all
it is, Mayor. I
committees?
know, if you would like it deleted, we can amend it as deleted. I had it in there and I sent the draft around. I
I
apologize.
know, I didn't catch it. So
I don't see, let me just say this. I
Yeah.
don't see a harm in having it. It doesn't mean that you're not ex officio on others.
that
but
was
you
really
are-
my
but you are
question.
Potentially creating a committee. It doesn't, I just thought that because it's a committee just being appointed, it would say that. It also distinguishes you from being the liaison to the committee. But
So here, the reason I ask this is oftentimes this comparison by one committee to the other, and I'm concerned a couple of years down the road, it's going to say, oh, see, if it was meant for the mayor to be, and again, whether it's me or anybody else, to be ex officio, it would say it, because here it does say it. That was the only thing that occurred to me as I'm reading now. I missed it. I've looked at this thing, I can't tell you how many times, as you know. So it doesn't matter to me. I'm just concerned about that one piece, that if we write it in one but not in the rest, that's all.
I'll look at the charter, Mayor, just to make sure. I believe
Okay,
it is advised, it is ex officio on each one. So if
okay.
someone down the road raised the issue, we can deal with it. But I can take it out or whatever.
All right,
is-
you'll let me know. We can do it right now. So I did want to make a comment. I think that, there was a lot of thoughtfulness in this. I want to thank Trustee Lopez. He has been the consistent trustee liaison. He was appointed by the mayor on a working committee related to this, and has stayed on with us for police related, and not only this, but the CPRB as liaison for consistency. We try to put at least one liaison from the board. It's not mandatory, but we have, as a board for a number of years now, tried to have a liaison to our dozen or so committees, and it is not often that we add committees. We last one, not so much added, but we totally re-engineered about 3 or 4, maybe 5 committees over the last 4 years. That's not the same as creating a brand new committee, because you also have to set up time, budgets, staff, a whole bunch of commitments go around setting up a volunteer committee. For a village, and there are no mandates that villages or any municipality has to have these committees. They're there to really help support the board in creating, I think, a better state for the village at large. So I do want to thank Trustee Lopez for staying on this so very much, and helping to write it, and other trustees who looked at it, and even after we all looked at it, much to Stuart's chagrin, we still missed a couple of things, but not for lack of trying. And we are here also because we are going to have some folks that we are ready to appoint, and this will start in January, and which is about 6 months, all in from A through Z, for the formation and the creation of all of this. So it's sort of neat. Trustee White and I were also talking about, if we're adding a committee, are we taking any away? Should we be looking at other committees? 22 project to be TBD, to look at some of the committees, because in fairness, the management of committees, minutes, staff time, legal time, budgets, locations, and it goes on and on and on, has both a financial cost and emotional cost and staff time and all that. So we'll look at it. Right now, I think we're in a good place, though. I feel like we've got the right committees lined up, mostly very active for the most part. So I think it's terrific. Totally optimistic. Stuart, you're still reading, or
No,
should we
Mayor, I
just-
can let
oh,
you know, pursuant to the Village Charter's Section 3-4, while you are to appoint to all committees, it does not explicitly say that you are an ex officio member of every committee. So
I
it
was
doesn't actually
misinformed.
say that there. Well,
Okay.
that doesn't mean you're misinformed, but it doesn't say it in the charter. So
Okay.
I think it's fine to keep it as it is, so
Okay.
it makes it explicit.
Okay, I don't actually appoint, however, to all committees either. The charter.
Well, what it is
yeah.
it's for committees that do not have, that are not specifically appointed by the BOT on
Right.
mayoral appointments.
Right. So I thank you for pointing out there was a reason, there was an actual reason I bring that up. The other reason is that every mayor brings their own fingerprint and footprint to their position. I have to say that I prefer that while mayors do, if it's a new committee, I could be the one appointing, but I actually prefer that we have the BOT, all 5 members of the board decide as a team on appointments. I think it's healthier for a democratic process, and would say that we should have more and more of that rather than less and less of that. So I think that it's just a footnote to this conversation, to be honest with you. Happy and excited to get this moving. I am excited about rolling out more and more of the plan, some of which has been done and some of which will continue to be done and be done well. So if there are no other comments from the trustees, I know we've discussed this a lot. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody looking at me
We've
and
had
raising their hand.
we've had a motion and
I know, we're in a vote.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Resolution B, appointments to Police Reform Advisory Committee. Resolved that the Board of Trustees appoints the following individuals to the Police Reform Advisory Committee with the terms for service indicated herein. Jackie Shaw, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Jennifer Cabrera, CPCRB Representative, January 1, 2022 to December 31, 2023. Althema Goodson, January 1st, 2022 to December 31, 2023. Gabrielle Hamilton, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Reverend Sean Ellison Jones, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Reverend Mary Pfeiffer, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Bishop Joan Whitaker, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Jermaine Smith, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. R.A. Vernon, NAACP Representative, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Kemi Pogue, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. And be it further resolved that Jackie Shaw is designated as the chairperson of the Police Reform Advisory Committee for the period of January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments from the board? I do want to thank Jackie Shaw. I want to thank everyone. To be clear, and we've said this before, but just to get this into the minutes, and if people look this up, anyone from the working committee that wanted to remain and be appointed was. And so we thank not only the work done on the working committee through last year, but also that folks wanted to continue. I reached out to all the folks that were volunteers, and there are a few that are on here that were not part of the working committee. But to be clear, everybody that was on the working committee had the option and the choice. And let me add, it's not over. We have these folks appointed. If people are interested for any reason of becoming members, like all of our councils, you need to email, I think, and we'll talk more about committees, but on our website, there is a place to volunteer for committees, send your resume and your reasons for wanting to be on the committee, and we will go through the process the way we do with everything else. We'll speak to the folks who want to volunteer their time and understand what it is that they want to get out of it, and see if if there are spots and if they can be appointed. Our pleasure. We're in the middle of a vote, yes?
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution C, DPW authorization to advertise for bids, contract DPW 21-04, rehabilitation of 200 Main Street, Ossining, New York. Resolved that subject to the review by Corporation Counsel, the village clerk is authorized to advertise for bids for contract DPW 21-04 rehabilitation at 200 Main Street, Ossining, New York. Such bids to be returnable to the village clerk. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
How is this different from what's going on right now? Isn't there work being done right now on the building?
I can defer to Paul on that.
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. It is the same project, Trustee White. It's hence the 21 designation on the contract award, contract number rather. We established a capital project in 21 with the money and contract to create a construction document through our consultant. And now this resolution is authorizing us to take that contract document to bid publicly, which is a requirement for this capital project and the requirement of the grant that we're receiving through the downtown revitalization fund from the state. When we first brought this to you, we expected to be done with this project towards the end of this year, the beginning of next year. Took a little extra time with the consultant to really do a deep dive into the building and identify everything that was in there for remediation and demolition. And then there was also a little bigger window that maybe we forecast with the state's review of the contract documents, which is necessary before we get it back and package it together, which we're basically completed now. Stuart and I will review those documents when it gets sent to us. And that won't take long at all because it's really just our boilerplate front end combined with one specific remediation technical spec that will be packaged and sent out in January. And getting the resolution to do that is the first step in that process. Once it's bid, we have site walkthroughs with potential contractors. We receive bid through the clerk's office and commence with the remediation. We anticipate that the work in the field will take about 6 months. So we're looking in mid 2022, probably in the sometime in the summer of 2022, we'll have a fully remediated building, at which point I'm sure the manager's office will start approaching about how to best put that building on the market, which is also a requirement of the grant.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The assessing of the building takes as much time, if not more, than remediating it, because it's going through literally every square inch of the building, determining what needs to be remediated, there's a tremendous amount of testing involved. Correct me if I'm missing anything, Paul, but it's a somewhat laborious process.
Okay, you're right there, Dana?
I have a cold.
It's that time of the year.
Sorry, I thought I had muted myself.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to make sure you're okay there. All righty.
Ready to vote, Mayor?
I don't see any other questions or comments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution D.
Before you start Resolution D, Stuart, Miguel, I know you have something in the Q&A. This is a work session. This is a session between staff and legislative body. We don't do conversations and we can't answer through Zoom. We do, once people go in the chat, we document into the minutes. So we take a picture of it, which Maddi has already done, but we don't necessarily answer questions. I will say this, as I said before, if anyone wants to join and raise their hand for any committee, including the one we just established, they just need to apply for it and it will be taken under consideration. I will also say that when you look at the makeup, I appreciate people wanting to represent different groups of a very diverse community, but the way we have agreed after many months of conversation is that this is so they established. Any individual, though, don't have to represent a group or a part of the community or anything. An individual who feels that they would like to participate and make this committee stronger and add their voice is welcome to apply. So please do so, but we don't answer the chats in work sessions. We just document it for the minutes. Okay, Stuart.
Thank you. Resolution D, Finance Capital Budget Adjustment 2018-2021 Community Center AC Chillers CDBG Grant and Transfer from General Fund Contingency. Whereas Village Management established a portion of the capital project in the amount of $125,000 with an initial capital resolution in 2018, management wishes to amend the project budget to $320,000 with the additional amount of $125,000 funded from CDBG funds and the balance of $70,000 funded from a general fund contingency transfer. Now therefore be it resolved, capital projects and capital project budgets are amended as follows, and then it's detailed in the resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is Dale still on? Or is it Paul? Can we get a little elevator speech on what this is about, please, folks? Dale, maybe you?
I'll defer to Dale for the capital transfer. I know
Okay.
this is one of the CDBG projects in the 20 to 22 cycle. This is the first one we're completing. This was in the field, and the design work was spearheaded by Andy. The chiller and the relative work came in a little higher than we thought, but we went back to the county, and they're good with it, and it's something that we want to award. It includes a lot of site work too. I think that's maybe what escalated it a little bit more than we thought. Definitely worthwhile project, and also it's going to be a benefit Bill greatly with the material that we're taking off the roof and kind of cleaning up that area over near that little senior space that he wants to have down on the west side of the community center there. So it's a good thing, and I'll throw it to Dale for the budget transfers.
Thank you, Mr. Frioli. Good evening, Mayor and Board. Essentially, when we had this project on the capital plan back in 2018, it was at an estimated amount of $250,000, of which we had transferred $125,000 initially. We did not do the establishment of the CDBG side until now at this point, because it's actually now been approved and we can establish it on the books. Along with that, as Paul noted, increased expenditures, also inflation over the course of the years since this was originally established as a capital project, have added to the costs. So that's where the additional transfer from the general fund will cover the award that I believe is next on the agenda. We already had engineering costs charged to this project and a small amount of contingency in case we run into any issues as they're transferring things over.
Okay, thank you. We're in the middle of a vote, right?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution E, DPW award of bid replacement of replacement of chiller at Joseph G. Caputo Community Center. Resolved that subject to review by Corporation Counsel, the Board of Trustees hereby awards the bid for contract number DPW 21-03, replacement of chiller at Joseph G. Caputo Community Center to Clean Air Quality Service, 161 Brady Avenue, Hawthorne, New York, 10532, for the bid amount of $261,609 as the lowest bid received from a responsive and responsible bidder. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? Stuart?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Stuart, I want to point out that it was after you said all those opposed that Dana said aye. I'm not sure she meant to oppose the previous one, but just to be
I caught her as an
on
aye.
point. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Mayor, can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for matters of personnel?
So moved.
Second.
I think we could go right to a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. It's 9:44 on the 8th of December. We will see you, for those interested, Wednesday for a legislative session. We are counting down the days to the end of the year.
Karen, can
So-
you just text Jacqueline? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good,
See you on the other side.
thank you. Have a good night, folks.